and this is very timely and topical, from Talking College Ball. Dearest Andrew, I hope this X finds you well. I've seen some fans pontificate their view of the Power 2. If the college football postseason tournament expands to 16 teams and auto bids are removed, who would be upset? I would not envision many. Warmly, Talking Ball. Well, Talking Ball, I think we know, based on about 100 years of history, that any potential changes to the postseason will cause people to complain. That is a given. We know that. Now, what you said, 16 teams, no automatic bids, I think would be very interesting. I think Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, I think they might find that interesting. I don't know that the other commissioners would find that incredibly interesting, although we're about to talk about this. So on Wednesday in Grapevine, Texas, the commissioners who run the college football playoff got together and they met about the format from 2026 and beyond. Remember, they've decided on a format for 2024 and 2025. Again, this is all very confusing. So drop a note in the chat if I'm confusing people, if I'm going off on too many tangents here. But right now they're talking about what they're going to do when this current TV contract ends, which is after the 2025 season, and what they'll do picking up in 2026. And so they are talking about potentially expanding it again. They could expand it to 14. They could expand it to 16. Now, Talking Ball, you're not going to get what you want here because they were still going to have automatic bids. In fact, now there's talk of more automatic bids. So more automatic bids probably going to the SEC and the Big Ten. I've said all along, don't codify your automatic bids. Do not say they go to this conference or this conference or this conference unless it's one per. Because if you say, well, these two get 2, the rest of you, we're not going to name any of you, but if you're the highest ranked and your champ is the highest ranked, then you're in. That doesn't make any sense. You should probably just do best 16 or best 14 if you want to do it that way. Because then the highest ranked group of 5 champ is going to get in some years. He's going to get in a lot of years. But I don't think they're going to do that. Everybody wants a guarantee. Everybody wants to know what they're getting. Now, here's what's interesting about this. So this ESPN contract, which Bill Hancock, who's the director of the CFP for now, he's on his way out. But he said they got to get this figured out in a month. Basically, everything has to start being planned for. Sites have to be booked. So they do not have much time to get this figured out. The contract we keep talking about is $1.3 billion a year. Now, more specifically, it's $120 million a game. Now, some games are worth more than others. Championship games, semifinals, those are worth more than quarterfinal games, are worth more than first-round games. But if we're going to talk about the number, I'm not going to get super upset about the number. I do think it's silly that you haven't even played a 12-team format yet and you're already going to expand it. If you're going to do that, just expand this year's to 14 or 16. And I realize you can't. You've already booked sites and everything. But if you're going to do that, just do it. Like, it's dumb to say we're going to do 12 just these 2 years. Like, what if 12's awesome? What if 12 turns out to be the perfect number and you've already scrapped it? But I'm not going to get too upset about the number. Again, if it's 14 or 16, it doesn't add any rounds to the tournament. The tournament has the same number of rounds either way. So let's look at this through the lens of the advisory group. So the advisory group is the SEC and the Big Ten. They're the people who run everything now. Whether they want to say it or not, whether they want to admit it or not, they're the people who run everything now. They want more of the money out of this. They want a higher percentage of money from this deal, and they're probably going to get it. They also probably want more money in general, and this would give everybody more money. So if it's $120 million a game, and again, no guarantee, we don't know how that contract is agreed upon, and it hasn't been signed yet, so everything's probably still up for negotiation. But let's say it's $120 million a game. If you go to 14, that's adding 2 games to the first round. That would be $1.5 billion a year that everybody would be splitting. presumably the Big Ten and the SEC getting a larger share than anybody else. If you go to 16, that would be $1.75 billion a year for everybody to split. Presumably the SEC and the Big Ten get a larger share. Now, here's where 14 is interesting. If it's 14, there's still 2 buys instead of 4 buys. There's 4 buys in the 12 team. There'd be 2 buys in the 14 team. Everybody else got to play a first round game. Who do you think's going to get those buys most years? Who might that be? Would it be the SEC champ and the Big Ten champ in some order? So there's why 14, which doesn't otherwise make much sense, might make sense. Yeah, we want our champions. Because remember, the buys were built into this thing when Greg Sankey and Jack Swarbrick and Craig Thompson and Bob Bowlesby, when they created this 12-team format a few years ago. The buys were built in to keep the conference championship games relevant, to make them matter, to make them still viable commercial properties. The SEC makes a ton of money off its championship game. The Big Ten makes a ton of money off its championship game. They don't want those to just be irrelevant. And we got another question later in Dear Andy about that particular piece of this, which is very interesting. But that's why. So if the SEC championship game and the Big Ten championship game were to be for a bye in the college football playoff, if the winner gets a bye and the loser has to go play a bunch of teams and play an extra game, then that would make sense. That would make sense why they would want that. And it gets the number up to 1.5. But remember, when they put this out to market, when they put the 12-team playoff out to market, they thought they were going to get $1.8 billion a year. They didn't. They got $500 million less than they thought they were going to get. This would help get them back to where they kind of wanted to be. So that's what's going on. And this is all going to happen very fast. Again, they've got about a month, and it's not like before. Remember before, the Pac-2, the 2-pack, could hold things up because everything had to be unanimous. This is the end of this 12-year contract at the end of the 25 season. It doesn't have to be unanimous anymore. Music Meister. I also don't think that the CFP and any TV media should be associated with each other. Music Meister, how would we watch the games if there were no TV media associated with the CFP? I don't think you understand how this works. We have to watch, they have to televise it if we get to see them, unless we just all go, but the stadiums aren't that big. So they're going to have to contract with somebody who televises games. Everybody thinks the TV is such a conspiracy. It is a conspiracy, but it's not as insidious as you think. Everybody's just trying to make the most money possible. That's what they're trying to do. But it's crazy to me that you've not even played a single 12-team format. Now, granted, there should have been a 12-team playoff last year. We can thank the members of the Alliance, the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big Ten for screwing that up. Pac-12 got destroyed. The ACC might be destroyed, and the Big Ten was pulling an okie doke on the Pac-12 and the ACC. So we know how that worked out. That was not a very smart move by the ACC and the Pac-12, and they played themselves. Like the ACC champ would have gotten in the playoff had the ACC not delayed the 12-team playoff. Congratulations. So we should have seen it already, but we haven't seen it yet, and yet they're already going to expand it. It is wild to me that this is how it's going to go down. And oh, by the way, there's this artificial timeline. Like, you got to get this done. I say artificial. It's not really artificial. Again, this stuff does have to be planned in advance, so there's not like a plumbers convention where they're supposed to have the national championship game. So they got to do this, but they're doing it very fast and at a time when the management of the sport is sort of up in the air. Because again, how college football is run kind of is going to get dictated by the courts and the National Labor Relations Board. So it's not like something could change dramatically in the next year, and then you're going to have to change all this again. Plus, I mentioned the ACC. You got them suing Florida State suing them. We don't know that everybody's conference membership is settled, that it's going to look like this in 2026. In fact, I think it's more likely it doesn't look like this in 2026. So stay tuned, everybody. We got a lot to talk about. There is no offseason here. None. No offseason whatsoever. First, I want to tell you about PrizePicks. Best daily fantasy app on the planet. Download that PrizePicks app. Use the referral code Andy, and you will get $100 deposit match up to. So if you deposit $100, they will match you $100. If you deposit 50, they'll deposit 50 to match you. And how's it work? So you're playing against a number. You're not playing against a bunch of fantasy sharks who are just using algorithms. You are playing against a number. So if you're, let's say, a college basketball game, and let's say it's a Kentucky game this weekend, and you want to see, they'll put Rob Dillingham's point total up there, and it'll be something to the tune of, they haven't put it up yet because the game's not till Saturday, but it'll be something to the tune of 16.5 points, and you decide more than or less than. You pick one square for that, pick another square for something else, and it doesn't have to be in the same sport. It could be NBA, NHL, it could be darts, it could be esports, you name it, they got it all. Could be slap fighting. I got to check. I don't know if there's a power slap event this week, so we got to find out. But if there is, I'll try to handicap it for you. But this way, you decide how risky you want to get. So if you want to go 2 squares, that's the least risk, but it's also the lowest payout. If you want to go 5 squares, that's the highest risk and the highest payout. So give it a shot. It's a whole lot of fun. Who knows? It might be like 80 teams by the time we actually see the 2026 college football playoff. But I do want to point out these numbers because this is one where, and I think maybe we're past that point where people get upset about that. Not that many teams deserve to make the college football playoff. It's not about deserve. It's about entertainment. It's about staging an entertaining tournament that you're going to want to watch on television. So let me throw these numbers out at you. In the NBA, 54% of the teams make the playoff. In the NFL, 44% of the teams make the playoff. In Major League Baseball, 40% of the teams make the playoff. In the NCAA tournament, 18.7% of the teams make the playoff. 68 out of 364 Division I teams. So it seems like a small number, but it's probably, of the power conference schools, it's probably closer to what you see in the pro sports, where it's like 30 to 40% of the power schools make it. Now, the CFP, if we're talking about just the FBS, that's 133 teams. The 12-team playoff, 9% make it. 14-team, 10.5%. 16-team, 12%. So it's still the most selective playoff of any of the major sports. Now, I'd say we could probably boil that down to power conferences because there's probably only one spot going to a group of 5 school. So if we just did the power conference, it was 65. Power conference in Notre Dame is 65. 12-team playoff is 18.5%. 14 is 21.5%. 16 is 24.6%. So closer to what the pro sports do, but still not that close. It would still be a pretty selective tournament. I think it'll be an entertaining one, but again, you're expanding it before we even see a 12-team. It's just wild. Andrew in the chat, give us a March Madness style bracket for CFP. A 64-team is just what the sport needs. 64-team playoff would be wild. Now, it's only 2 extra games if we think about it that way. Like 16's the winner has to win 4 games. 64-team playoff, the winner has to win 6 games. So it's not as outside the realm of, and meanwhile, the commissioners are like, ooh, we hadn't thought of that. Andrew, don't give them ideas. Don't give them ideas. They're struggling enough as it is. They're just making this up as they go along. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.